I will tell you that we're starting with the judicial races because I am a huge fan of the judicial races. If you're familiar with the voter guide that we have been sending out the last 3-4 cycles, the main reason for that voter guide is to familiarize people with the judicial races, because I think they are one of the most important things that are paid the least amount of attention to on a regular basis. So as I've said to a few people recently, if you're not paying attention to the judicial races, you are not paying attention. These days, if you don't realize how important it is that we elect the right people to the judicial seats, you really haven't been paying attention. So I hope that we can make sure that more people are paying attention to these races. And those of you who have joined us this evening obviously feel that that is an important thing to be paying attention to. I want to open this evening by just doing a little tiny bit of an introduction to the seats that our candidates are running for. We're going to start with the 22nd Circuit Court seats, and we have 2 candidates running for that seat. And just a brief description of what it does in case you don't know. In general, the Circuit Court handles civil cases with claims of more than $25,000 and all felony criminal cases where the accused, if found guilty, could be sent to prison. Family Division of Circuit Court handles all cases regarding divorce, paternity, adoptions, personal protection actions, emancipation of minors, treatment and testing of infectious disease, safe delivery of newborns, name changes, juvenile offenses, and child abuse and neglect. In addition, the Circuit Court hears cases appealed from the other trial courts, the district and probate courts, or from an administrative agency. We have 1 seat up for election this cycle, basically, and the candidates can correct me if I'm wrong. We're going to be voting on that are we voting on that on August, Arianne and Marla?
November.
Okay, so there is nothing on the August ballot for you guys this time. So it'll be the November. I didn't think we had exactly a primary there. Okay. The other seat that is up this time is Michigan's 14A District Court. It's located in Washtenaw County, serves all of the cities within the county limits except for Ann Arbor and Ypsi Township. That court handles civil litigation under $25,000, excluding equity and small claims under $3,000. They handle misdemeanors, ordinance violations with sentences less than 1 year, preliminary trials on felony charges, and landlord, tenant, or summary proceedings. They also handle jury trials. We have 1 seat up for election there. And are we up to 4 or 5 candidates for that seat now? 4, thank you, Torchio. So we'll be hearing from a few people on that seat tonight. The way we are going to do this is we're going to let the candidates introduce themselves, talk about who they are, why they're running, and why they think you should vote for them. We are going to get through all of the candidates, and then we will open it up for questions, and you can pose those questions to any or all of the candidates. You may either raise your hand using the raise hand function of Zoom. Sometimes that's a little hard for people to find. I know for me, it is, let's see if I can find it. Under the more dots that I see on my screen. If you cannot find the raise hand, put something in the chat to either myself or Brian, and we will recognize you for you to be able to answer your question or ask your question. You can also put your question in chat, and one of us will be happy to read your question out to the candidates. So however you want to do that, we are happy to accommodate you. So we're going to start with the circuit court candidates, and I'm going to go in alphabetical order by last name. So Marla, I think that means you're going to be up first.
Yes, I think both my last names come first.
No. Oh, both your last names. Yes. Yes. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Marla, can you?
I can.
Okay, then take it away.
Okay, well, you're going to have to click.
Okay.
So there's one more click on the screen. There you go.
Ah.
Good evening. So great to be here with everyone. I'm Marla Linderman Richelew, and I'm devoted to you. I'm devoted to protecting our rights. I'm devoted to serving our community. And that's why I'm here to talk to you tonight. Jennifer? Click. Awesome. You're gonna have to keep, there you go. So this is me and my family. I think it's always important so you can get a full idea. This is obviously me, my son Josh, he's a Skyline Junior, my daughter Naomi, and she is a sophomore at U of M, or she will be a sophomore at U of M, and my husband Josh. He is a U of M sport administrator, but some people may know him because he also taught at Pleasant Ridge Elementary and Saline High School, and is a former soccer coach at Pioneer and Saline. So, and he refereed for all the high schools in Washtenaw County for a couple decades, I think. And then, of course, my mini golden doodle twins, Paisley and Oliver. So that's the Linderman Richelews. So why do I want to be your judge? I think that's such an important question. Since an early age, I knew that everyone was treated fairly, that people were treated differently. In elementary school, this really hit home to me. I know that sounds weird, but it's true. And I dedicated my life to making sure that I try to make a world better. You know, I really believe in serving my community by ensuring everyone is treated fairly. It's important to me that there's compassion on the bench, that people understand, you know, all the different things that affect people's lives and how they may have gotten there before you. And that you always see them as their total person. And I want to eliminate barriers to justice. There are barriers. There's barriers in employment, there's barriers in education, there's barriers in public services and accommodations. And that's why I became a civil rights attorney, because I wanted to go and remove those barriers. Click. We're getting there. I'm sorry. It's easier if I'm doing it. I apologize. Okay, let's talk about serving the Washtenaw community. I'm not going to tell you everything I'm doing. If I do, that will take up my entire time talking to you. But just a couple of things that may be important to you is seeing some of the leadership roles I have held in Washtenaw County. Past president of Women Lawyers and New Lawyers. I've been named Young Lawyer of the Year for Washtenaw County. Some of you know I'm a past Democratic precinct delegate. Can we go back? Sorry, we're already going forward.
Sorry, I did not mean to
that's
click
fine.
that. Now I'm not sure how to get back.
I know what I do.
Oh, there we go.
Awesome. I'm Washtenaw Association for Justice Executive Director. I'm Skyline PTSO President. I just got elected for a second term. I'm on JFS, which is an organization that's a safety net, where I'm involved in WISE, which is the Washtenaw Integrated Senior Experience, which is going to bring, you know, services throughout Washtenaw County to seniors. So we're very excited about that. Debbie Dingle helped us get $1.5 million to help improve the senior experience and bring medical care and food services and transportation throughout the county. And I'm also amicus counsel to the Michigan Association for Justice. Those are known as the trial attorneys. And for 15 years, I have been trusted to represent the rights of workers and individuals who've been injured in our Supreme Court on all issues dealing with civil rights, with constitutional law, and employment discrimination. And that's been such an honor. For those of you, some of you probably know, but some of you may not, Michigan Association for Justice is an organization of 1,300 attorneys. So when they can choose from anyone. So it is always my honor that they have put such faith in me. And for the first time in their history, they early endorsed an attorney for judge, and that was me. They've never done that in 75 years because they think it's so important that we get a civil rights attorney on the bench, someone who understands about voting rights, someone who understands about diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And so I'm proud that I was so early endorsed. So one of the things that I'm very lucky about is that I'm really trusted by my peers. I've actually been elected by the Washtenaw County attorneys to be the representative assembly, the State Bar of Michigan Representative Assembly representative. There's 4 of us out of all the attorneys in Washtenaw County. And I was appointed to the diversity committee because of my work in that area of law. I've also been on the State Bar of Michigan's diversity committee. And like I said, I do amicus counsel. So these are just a couple of the cases I've done that thought people should be familiar with. I thought marital rights. I was an amicus counsel. It was really nice at the Bar Association. Dana Nessel spoke and did a shout out for me to help her with Roush World, which is going to hopefully result in protection based on sexual orientation under Elliot Larson. Lishan versus Morse is more well known as Feiger versus Michael Morse, but it changed the law so that you can no longer require people to have to arbitrate if they're sexually assaulted by their employers. Seems obvious, but these are the kinds of things we're fighting in the courts. And then these petitions. I know we're all thinking about these petitions. We need to get them signed. The reason there are so many is because of this case where we tried to go and get the Supreme Court to go and talk about, can the legislature go and take a petition and make it law so that our governor can't veto it. So now we have to have petitions on both sides to make sure that the voters have rights. Those are the kinds of issues I've been involved in. I'm also appointed the Courts and Civil Procedures Committee, which means that every rule, every change throughout Michigan about courts, I get a voice because people trust me, and I've been so involved in so many courts. I'm also an author and former law professor. I did write the book that most attorneys use to help people reopen safely. And I think I said beforehand that Elizabeth Welch, Justice Welch now, and I during COVID were doing seminars throughout the state, helping workers understand their new rights and make sure that they got protection in unemployment. I've actually helped, I think, over 1,000 people at this point since September about unemployment at reduced rate pro bono services, because so many people are being asked to pay back money when they don't know it back. They're entitled to it. They worked for it. I write the book to help other attorneys chapter on disability law, housing law, Title IX, Wrongful Imprisonment Conviction Act, and those kinds of things. I'm also trusted by legislators. One of the things that I'm super proud of right now is, and you've probably seen this if you're on Facebook, especially like the Democratic posts, a lot of people are talking about the changes to no-fault law and how people who were tragically injured years ago have lost the right to home health care, and how important it is that this get fixed. Well, I was the attorney that was chosen to represent the bipartisan group of 70 representatives and senators who said, no, we did not mean to take away that right. Thankfully, every single one of our representatives in Washtenaw County and our senator signed on to that memo saying, no, we did not mean to take away these rights. I'm really lucky to work with them. I work with them about unemployment. When we were doing the COVID law, I was brought in to testify. Medical malpractice laws, I've been brought in to testify. I end up testifying quite a bit, trying to work with them and building bridges between everyone, trying to go and protect workers' rights. Ready? Thanks. So, criminal justice, restorative justice. This is,
and before you go on too much here, Marla, I've got you at about 1 more minute. So
okay, well then I will go quickly through this. Can we just go to the next slide then?
Sure.
Awesome. So these are things that I'm committed to. I went to the crew report. This is obviously going to be a summary, but I'll have transparency day one, data collection in all cases. Day one, I support the equity audit, Citizens Race Equity Commission, pretty much everything they've asked for. I believe we need to work together. Sorry.
Moving on.
Yep, sorry. It's hard because we're moving through this. This talks about accessibility, all the things that I plan to do to make it more accessible to everyone of all abilities, of all financial means, of work-life balance. I want to encourage pro bono and limited representation programs. I think that's really important. I'm one of the co-chairs for the federal pro bono project. And we'll just go to the end because I don't want to go. So this is what I stand for. In my courtroom, you will have a voice. You will be heard. You'll be treated with respect. I will never be too busy to care. You will never be a case to me. Equity, fairness, and compassion will be how justice is defined in my courtroom. And that's what I stand for. And that's why I'm running for Washtenaw County Circuit Court. So thank you. I appreciate you. And if you want to learn more, you can go to my website, which is marlaforjudge.org.
Okay, thank you so much, Marla. And next up is Arianne Slay.
Hey everyone. I don't have a fancy PowerPoint like Marla. Way to go, Marla. It was pretty fantastic. But I can share some personal experiences with you. So I thank the Western Washtenaw Dems for having us all here today. And I will take this opportunity. Jennifer, we have 10 minutes, not including questions. Okay, so I'm gonna yak at you for a couple of minutes, but I am an open book. One of the things that you learn when running for office is that there are no secrets. So if there's something personal and if you don't feel comfortable talking about it in the group, I invite you to contact me. I'll put my cell phone number, I will put my email address in the chat, and you can ask me those questions on a less public stage that's not being recorded, and I'm happy to do that. I will tell you, I've had the same cell phone number since 1996. I'm like Sprint T-Mobile customer #1, so I'm there for you. But I'm running for judge because justice is very personal for me. And I'm going to share something about my family that I have not publicly shared a lot, but I'm starting to feel that it's necessary so that people understand what makes me tick. My dad was a police officer, and that's kind of scary for a lot of people because they have a really bad rap, especially right now. And institutionally, I understand and I get that. And I didn't understand why my dad was a police officer because he took so many issues with the police. And as a young teen, he told me why he joined the police coming out of Vietnam. And he said, Arianne, sometimes when you have to make change, you have to go into the fray to be able to do it. And I didn't understand what he meant by that. And he went on to tell me that when he was a youngster, living in the lowlands of Kentucky, on his very last day as a Kentucky resident, he was graduating from high school the next day. He and his older brother by 1 year, Bobby, watched my granddad, Bob Moe, be lynched. And on that day, he knew that he had to leave because they would come for him too. And so he said goodbye to my grandma. They didn't have money. This was a man who was, as a young person, didn't have shoes until he was 4. They were not a family of means. And he said, I love you. I don't know where I'm going, but we can't stay here. And so they hitched a ride in the morning up to Lexington, about 45 miles away. And that is where they signed up to join the service during Vietnam. And when he came back, he joined the police. And I asked him why he would be willing to do such a thing. And he said, I did it because the next Bobby or Ron needs to be able to report to someone. The cops that lynched your grandfather, and that's right, you heard me, the cops and the Klan were one and the same people. And there's a lot of atonement for that. But we need to be here for people who have not seen themselves in the justice realm. They have not seen themselves as equals or respected. This is why I became a prosecutor, to be a gatekeeper. This is why I've continued my work in police training. This is why I want to be a judge. I want to be there because my perspective and my life experience matters. My perspective and my life experience have prepared me to bring equity and show diversity in a place where we haven't seen it in our courts and our, generally across our country. I just personal stuff about me that not that we can get much more personal than that, but I live in Ipsy Township. I am a mother of 2 fantastic kids. I'm married to a public school teacher named Sean, who's fantastic, and he teaches the heck out of 6th grade. I have experience working in the Washtenaw County Jail as a community corrections agent, where I helped those who were really struggling with substance abuse, addiction, anger management issues to make sure that they had the appropriate treatment. And I learned something fantastic during that time. I learned that going to jail doesn't help anybody. However, there are sometimes that people have to be removed from our community for safety reasons. But it is really, welcome, my dog is here. This is my dog, Cola. I'm so sorry. But I also learned when I was in the jail that we really need to be addressing the root causes of why people become justice involved to begin with. So that we don't see them again. For all of our criminal practitioners on here, so sorry, for all of our criminal practitioners on here, we know that we see the same people often time and time again, and that they have these really strong root issues that are not addressed. It is my goal to bring to you a justice reform project, in the sense that I will be looking at every single person as an individual, addressing their root issues and trying to lift them up. Just because you have a brush with the justice system does not mean you have to be worse off. I have also done a lot of stuff as a city attorney that I think will help expand that field of vision for not just myself, but for the entire community. I've been a deputy city attorney for the last 5 years. And one of the things that I've focused on is bringing expungement work into the city. So I will drop that information into the chat if you're interested. And of course, just one judge, this is what I would say normally. So sorry, it's a golden retriever and she brought me a chew toy. It's like impossible. Once they start, they never stop. So I decided to put her outside real quick. So I was saying I've started an expungement program. I've started an adult criminal diversion program, which is the first one in Washtenaw County. We have served over 250 people since last July, addressing these root issues that I talked about. We also have started a warrant resolution program to help people to walk in on their warrants in a very trauma-informed way. Having police contact is frightening and life altering. And I understand that because I've seen that time and time again. But I also support transparency. I think Jennifer was right when she was saying judicial races are one of the most important races that we have, and very little people pay attention to them. But we're making these decisions that affect an entire community. And then sometimes it's generational after generational, like effects, they ripple. And so we really need to be careful as to who we are putting into office. And one of the things that I think would help make sure that we're making the right decision is that if we have data going forward. Our Chief Justice, Bridget McCormick, has asked for the largest request of money recently from the state government to look at data systems. Right now, we don't have very much to provide you with, right? And the courts aren't subject to FOIA. And so we have very little things for the public to actually look in real time, or even months or years later, to say they're doing it right or they're doing it wrong. It's hard to hold judges accountable if you can't see what we're up to. So I invite you, as those conversations are developing across our community, just like they are here in Western Washtenaw with this great commission that I've been hearing about that Jennifer's on, or they're a task force, they're getting together and talking about what we can do to look at equity on a greater scale of the city, and maybe even forming an independent police commission. All right, get involved in those transparency conversations because they're extremely important. You look to your judges and to your other public servants as community caretakers. And that is exactly how I see my role. I'm there to apply the law equally to everyone and in good faith, but to be a caretaker at the same time. Everyone will be treated with respect in a trauma-informed way. And that is my promise that I have to you. A couple other just fun things.
You have
I'm
1 minute,
currently-
Arianne.
Thank you, Ms. Jennifer. I have been working very recently on a personal protection order committee. So hopefully coming soon to an ordinance just east of you guys in Ann Arbor. We're looking at some common sense gun regulations regarding personal protection orders, which is going to be fantastic. And I've been writing a lot of ordinances for the city. So I have great experience in that and determining those. I'm also the chair of your bias awareness committee for the local bar association. And I have so much more I'd like to share. I wish I had more time with you all tonight. I'm going to put my contact stuff in the chat. So if you guys are interested in giving me a call, an email, feel free, of course, to ask your question publicly, but I understand that's not for everyone. So I'll stop there so we can get started on the next group. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you, Arianne. Okay, so up next are our 4 candidates for the 14A District Court seat. As I said, this is a court that covers all of Washtenaw County except for Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti Township. So if you are in Western Washtenaw, this is a court that affects you. We are going to go in alphabetical order. So that means Fawn Armstrong, you are up first.
Hello, thank you. I appreciate you letting me be on the forum. I'm excited to talk to you guys today. Again, my name is Fawn Armstrong. I'm running for 14A District Court Judge. I previously worked for 2 civil law firms. I am currently a Washtenaw County Assistant Prosecutor. I've been here for about 10 years. I'm currently assigned to Circuit Court. I've also did 3 years in the Appellate Division. The majority of my time, really, I spent about 6 years in district court, about 5 of those assigned to 14A courts. Most of the time was spent in 14A2, which most likely that will be the assignment of this open position. 14A2 is in Ypsilanti City. So that was the majority of my time in district court. As a prosecuting attorney, I try to treat each case, each defendant as an individual, especially now with the new administration. I have less strict policies and more discretion. So I do have, which has been great, that I have more freedom now to truly take into account what the court issue is. How did this person get before the court? What is the issue? What can we treat? And because that's what's most important is this court at the district court level, I think is a court of making changes in people's lives. We can focus on rehabilitation and not punishment. Like I said, I'm currently at circuit court, and circuit court is kind of more about, are we going to prison or not? What's happening, jury trial or not? And I've seen in district court work that the judges are just able to spend a lot more time talking to defendants, following up on their progress on probation, and really trying to have that rehab, that specialized programming before things escalate, before things go to a circuit court level. We can focus a lot on age of the defendant, their history, their own trauma. Do they have substance abuse issues, mental health issues, and really give an individualized programming for that. I really try to do a lot of my prosecution as giving second chances. I truly believe in giving second chances. People have struggles, people are fallible, but they can change, and we can do that with that discretion that we have. I believe that being a judge shouldn't just be, I guess, a passive arbiter of the law, sitting up on the bench. It really should be a position of opportunity, the opportunity to really impact and change people's lives for the better. And I've seen that change happen. It's amazing to watch when it does happen. One of my favorite dockets was a domestic violence docket. It was just a review docket. And the defendants would come in every month, every 2 months, and just to talk to the judge and say how they're doing, what's going on in programming, what's going on with my job, with my home life. And over time, you could see people become almost lighter. You could see the stressors being taken off of them. They came in excited to talk to the judge about, oh, what's going on, or I learned this one thing, this one tactic in this programming, and how to deal with certain stressors and how to react in those situations. And I did that tactic and it worked. And you see their family lives are better, their kids are happier, their job is better, and that's exciting. I mean, that's what we're here for, is of course lowering recidivism, but that also means making people's lives better, and that makes the whole community better, and it makes the community safer. And that was really, I think, what inspired me at that point to want to be a district court judge, because I want to be a part of that change. And I think it is so important because I have over the years seen so many times of now teenage adult children coming into court charged with some of the same crimes that their parents had been charged with. And man, if we could have just maybe reached that family and given the right individualized programming back then, back when the parents had some sort of case before the court, then maybe that would have changed that whole family's lives, and those children wouldn't have born raised in a trauma, which perhaps have led to them now committing crimes themselves. That trauma, your home life, it absolutely impacts a child's development, how they behave, their choices and decisions later on in life. So I think that we can make a lot of changes, again, getting to that core of someone's individual issues and trying to treat that. So again, I've spent a lot of time in those 14A district courts. So I've been familiarized with some of the same issues that face that specific community, especially Ypsilanti. They face so many issues of lack of income, lack of good jobs, of affordable housing, of affordable daycare, lack of transportation, issues with not having driver's licenses, lack of family support, and lack of options. I feel that I understand personally what some of those struggles are. I was a single mom for about 10 years. For a large part of that, I was a struggling single mother, and going from just trying to make ends meet, paycheck to paycheck, being one unexpected bill away from disaster, and that is something that affects a lot of the people that come before the court as well, and that's something that a judge in that court needs to understand and have that compassion for that, because knowing what it's like leads to understanding in your decisions, because the judge there is the one not only setting the sentences, setting the fines, ordering someone to community corrections, that's $12 a test. Probation oversight is $30 a month, and then court costs on top of that, fees for tickets, all of that, right, plays into, can somebody pay their bills? And not only that, say it goes into, say someone's on probation or someone's on bond and they can't pay for something. And it's up to that judge then to determine, am I going to violate this person because they can't pay? If that's what it boils down to, just an inability to pay, then a judge in that position needs to have the insight of what people's daily lives are, because they're the one determining and deciding if someone's going to jail because they couldn't pay. So there's a lot of issues, again, that face the people in that area. A little bit more about me. I don't want to ruin my time here. I spent 8 years in the Army Reserves. I did one tour of duty in Iraq, August 05 to August 06. I earned a Bronze Star for merit for that time. I was an E5 sergeant over in Iraq. I left because I had my baby. After 8 years, I was an E6 staff sergeant. So at any given time as a sergeant, I had about 5 to 10 soldiers underneath me that I had to lead and direct. One of the things that we were always told and taught in leadership training was that you of course lead by example, and you never ask someone to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. So anytime as a leader we would ask or order our soldiers to do something, we were right there doing it with them.
And I'm going to give you your 1 minute warning.
Thank you so much. My experience in the Army has taught me inner strength, discipline, integrity, how to handle difficult situations, and how to make difficult decisions. And all of that, I believe, has prepared me to be a district court judge. My family life, I have a 13-year-old daughter. She goes to Saline Middle School. I'm newly married. My husband is a criminal defense attorney. He's been a defense attorney for about 12 years. He did a couple of years before that as a Wayne County prosecutor. When we moved in together, I strongly urged him to join the appointed list in Washtenaw County for criminal cases, because I absolutely believe that he is a good attorney, and all defendants deserve to have a quality of representation regardless of ability to pay. The last thing I want to say is that I believe that the position of district court judge should be about, of course, believing in people and hope. I think that's something that people need in order to change, to motivate them to change, is hope. I hope to show that I believe in defendants and want to give them the hope that their future can be better. I want to give them second chances, and I, as 14A judge, will be the judge who listens, who has empathy and compassion, who gives second chances, and who believes in and fosters change. Thank you.
Thank you, Fawn. Next up is Karl Barr. Karl, you're still muted.
Yes, that would help to put the microphone on.
We've all been there.
Well, it just goes to show one of my points that I was going to get to in my speech, and that I'm new at this. I haven't been engaged in politics in the past. Our city contract, we represent the city of Ypsilanti, prohibits us from engaging in local politics, much as the judicial canons prohibit judicial candidates from engaging in politics as well. This has been a very fun experience for me. It's been invigorating. I've been learning so much and meeting so many wonderful people. I am so honored and grateful for this opportunity to speak to all of you, to learn from all of you, and hopefully with the people's vote, serve as the next judge of the 14A District Court. For those of you who do not know, the 14A District Court was formed as the 14th District Court in 1968. There were 4 positions available at that time. When the 14B District Court was formed in 1982, one of those spots went away by attrition. There are 3 seats of that spot. Of the 14A District Court, the last time that any of them was open for an open seat such as we have now was 1978, when Judge Karl Fink ran and was elected. So it is that rare that these spots can come open, and echoing Jennifer's comments about how important it is to elect the right people for those spots. So about myself, I'm a municipal attorney, a private attorney. I live in Scioto Township. I work in Ypsilanti. I was born and raised in Ypsilanti. I'm the son of John Barr Sr. I'm the father of 2 and the stepfather of 1. One of my children is transgender. My oldest and stepdaughter are in their 2nd year of college. My youngest is a sophomore at Skyline. I'm a partner of Kaylee Garcia, whose mother is Patricia Garcia, some of you may know. I'm an Eagle Scout. My Eagle project was cleaning up the riverbank of the Huron River in 1988. I'm the committee chair of Scout Troop 7 in Ann Arbor. I'm a past board member of the Ypsilanti Meals on Wheels and a past officer board member of the Washtenaw 100 Club, which supports fallen police and firefighters. Some of you may remember in 2006 when the Chelsea police chief and captain from the fire department were killed in a helicopter accident, that someone from our board was at their house the next day with immediate financial assistance. Luckily, it was not me, that I didn't have to, meet the widow, as I think that would have been very difficult. Some of you may know my father, John Barr, is an attorney. He's been practicing out of the office that he built with his former partner in 1963. That's the office that I practice out of. That's where I'm sitting right now. What you see behind me is not a screen saver or anything. This is actually our library. This is where I'm coming to you from. We've been here a long time. My father's 86 and he's still working. I think he works more than I do. He's been a city attorney for Ypsilanti since 1981, also the city prosecutor. While I was in high school at Ypsilanti High School, then known as Ypsilanti High School, the Braves, I was given many lessons from my father about law, responsibility, and civic duty. I grew up around the law practice and always wanted to be an attorney growing up. I suppose some that knew me in high school might be surprised to know where I am now, because my grades coming out of Ypsi High probably wouldn't be coming of someone that would be an attorney, but took me a few years in my undergrad to learn what I was supposed to learn in high school and then graduate, matriculate on to law school. I graduated Ypsilanti High School in 1989, graduated from Northern Michigan University in 1996, Michigan State College of Law in 2000. While I was in law school, I had the good fortune of being able to conduct 2 jury trials by myself between my second and third year through a prosecuting attorney's internship. After law school, I sampled a different path and went into the tax department of an accounting firm, Plant Moran LLC. I enjoyed the people there greatly. It was an incredible firm, incredible experience. But after a couple of years of being in the office, not a lot of interaction except for the people we work with, I decided I wanted to get back into court, because to me, I think court's the most fun part of the job. And so I went to work for my father in 2001. My early years at the firm were predominantly prosecution for the city of Ypsilanti, city of Belleville, did real estate work, general civil work for those municipalities, as well as we still represent the Saline Area Fire Authority, Milan Area Fire Authority. We represent Lodi Township. I've also had a real estate broker for, I think, a license for the past 15 years. I do not broker properties. I don't want to compete with the realtors. I'd rather, heretofore them send me the legal business and, not try and do what they do. Some of my proudest moments in practicing the law have been cleaning up neighborhood problems. I've helped that doing that in the city of Ypsilanti in conjunction with the police department by filing nuisance abatement actions against properties that have become nuisances in the city. And the way these type of cases come about is when the community asks for something to happen based on what is happening to them. These are not initiated power plays from the city or the police department, but when the community asks. So it's been very rewarding for me to be able to stop criminal activity. And usually those properties turn from their illegal use, which is negatively impacting the neighbors and the communities, into a positive presence in the neighborhood. One of the properties is now part of the Hope Clinic in Ypsilanti. I've also very much enjoyed my past participating in 2 groups for the city of Ypsilanti, one being the Gateway Committee. That was a group that was started and asked for by the Southside neighborhood, which is the gateway of our city from I-94. The group was started by community members, was made up of local elected officials, prosecutor's office, public defender's office, NAACP, and our office. That particular area, and in the most specific area, was Harriet Street in the city of Ypsilanti, and in the late 90s and early 2000s, there were an immense amount of complaints for drugs, alcohol, and prostitution and gambling. Eastern Michigan University did a study about where all of those complaints were over a 3-year period in the city of Ypsilanti, and the vast majority of them were in that street area. So through the group and through a consensus of all of the stakeholders, it was decided, and myself and the police chief at the time worked with the court in preparing a conditional bond request. And that whereas if someone was arrested in that neighborhood for any of those listed offenses, that as part of their bond, if they didn't live there, they couldn't be there. If they were there, they could be subject to immediate arrest. But the best part of that particular program and the close working with the community engagement about what was happening and what was going to be happening is that through that publicity, through everyone learning and understanding about that, the problem fixed itself without arrests. I think in a year after that program was initiated, there was only one arrest in that neighborhood for those listed offenses. Another group that I took part of and would be interested in restarting is the bench bar. And that was part of the community and the 14A2 district court, which unless something changes is the seat that the four of us are running for. But we formed, it was the part of the court. We had the city attorney's office, prosecutor's office, public defender's office, EMU police department, and the building department for the city of Ypsilanti. We would meet monthly and everybody would talk a little bit about what's going on within their particular department. So we all knew what challenges the other departments were facing and how we could best act for the community. A somewhat simple sounding thing that would come out of that is the police department could communicate with the court about when certain officers were scheduled. And with the court knowing and with the potential of witness testimony, could schedule something when an officer would normally be on duty, reducing the overtime cost. And also if they were on all night, the day before, they probably didn't want to sit around in court all morning, and it would affect, how they would testify. I'm
going to give you your 1 minute warning.
Oh, well, we're getting close. Sorry. Thank you. I have also decriminalized a lot of ordinances for the city of Ypsilanti and creating the Administrative Hearings Bureau that moved things from the district court to the city, and all the fines and costs stay at the city. I've defended the city's human rights ordinances. I've assisted other private clients for the past 20 years, try and get to my goals pretty quickly. My overall goal, what I'd like to do is increase the trust between the community and the judicial system. I think that's the number one thing that can help overall in reducing problems, by way of big problems, kind of riot type things. But thank God we have not had anything like that when we have a shooting or something like that. Last one in the city was, I think, 15 years ago. I'd like to fight bigotry. I'm in favor of justice, and particularly access to justice for all. I would like, as part of what I want to do on the bench, would be increase the use of specialty courts to reduce recidivism. I would judge people by the content of their character as demonstrated by the facts presented, not by the color of the skin or the amount of money in their bank account. I would aim to judge with respect and fairness. And the reason I'm running is I would like to continue serving the public, the community that I grew up in, and that I report to work every day, in a different capacity. Hopefully do that for 20 years and go back and continue working with my dad when he was 106. I would ask everyone to please look for Barr at the bottom of the ballot. And I thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much. So our next candidate up for 14A District Court is Stuart Collis. Stuart, if you want to unmute yourself, and you are up.
I am very impressed that you pronounced it right, Jennifer. I mean, you've seen me more than once, but most people give me Collins or Collis or Callis. And as I tell people, my name is Collis. My parents were too poor to afford the N. Anyways, I'm here because I am also running for 14A District Court Judge. I am an attorney who has 25 plus years of litigation experience. I have been practicing not only in the district courts, but in the circuit courts and the Court of Appeals. And in fact, recently won my 6th straight appeal in the Court of Appeals. So I have a great deal of experience, including being licensed in the federal courts in the Eastern District of Michigan, the Western District of Michigan, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, the U.S. Tax Court, the Southern District of Indiana as well. And I'm also licensed in 2 other states, Illinois and New York. So I bring a wide range of knowledge and information to a position that requires a great deal of information and knowledge to rule or judge other people and to assist other people. And because of this wide breadth of knowledge that I bring, I can make the district court a better place. Right now, if you're not familiar with the district courts, as Jennifer indicated some of it, the district courts deal with cases that are wide and varied. They deal with cases where there are civil matters for $25,000 and less. They deal with landlord-tenant. They deal with traffic. They deal with small claims. They deal with misdemeanors. They're the first stage of felonies for so they have the probable cause conferences and the preliminary exams. So the district courts are going to cover a great breadth of information and cases. And this is where someone like myself would excel in the district court because, of course, I have done all of those cases. I've represented landlords. I've represented tenants. I do court-appointed criminal defense, and I also do retained criminal defense. I do commercial cases. I do civil cases, collection cases that are day in and day out. I am in the district courts almost every single day of every week. Just today, for example, I was in 5 different courts in one day. Thank God for Zoom. I remember when I had to do this pre-Zoom, I was putting a lot of mileage on the car, so this is a lot better for the environment. Now, the district where I am concerned is that people in the United States are always going to appear in court. Statistically, every individual is going to appear in a courtroom once in their lifetime. And most likely, if it's not for a divorce, it's going to be in the district court because it handles these common matters that people have to deal with. And the district courts need to be compassionate. They need to respond to the people. And they need to make sure that this system is working for everyone. But in order to have a working court system, we can't see people as just churning a mill. And I see that day in and day out in court where the judges, and not thankfully mostly in this county, are just like, oh, it's just a misdemeanor. We're going to push it through, plead guilty, fines and costs, have a nice day. Or it's a civil case. Oh, you know, you owe the money, you don't owe the money, rule for whoever. And that's wrong. This is not how the courts should be. We live in a system where, quite frankly, there's government and the big plaintiffs have a distinct advantage. And that advantage has to be neutralized. As an example, we have civil cases on a daily basis that I see in the district court because I represent a number of firms that are in the collection industry. So hospitals, landlords, whatever, collecting bills from people that don't have the money or haven't paid the bill or whatever. And these cases, generally speaking, are small, say about $2,000 to $5,000 on average. What attorney can they hire to represent their interests? What attorney can they hire that isn't going to bill them an arm and a leg to defend this case? And they don't know the rules of evidence. People don't know the rules of evidence. People don't know how to do this. People are absolutely stunned, for example, in your typical medical collection case, that in Michigan, the hospital, doctor, anesthesiologist, whoever, does not have to bill the insurance company. An individual is liable. And it is up to the individual to either sue their insurance company to get paid or to follow up with their insurance company beforehand to get paid. And in many cases, especially where Medicaid's involved, if the individual didn't do it in 1 year, Medicaid won't pay at all. And so we're taxing and punishing the poor for a lack of knowledge. And that simply isn't fair. And it bothers me. And that this is one big area that needs change. And one of my goals is to create a task force and create a set of people that will help with these kinds of cases so that these people are not represented. A $2,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 case may not be a big deal to an attorney, but to a person who lives paycheck to paycheck, it could be life-altering and crippling. Worse, a garnishment takes 25% of someone's pay. If they're working paycheck to paycheck, what does that do now? That cycles someone so they can't pay their rent. They lose their home. And it only gets worse from there. The other area that I notice in the law that really needs a lot of work is small claims. Right now in the 14A District Court, if you go to small claims, you'll first go to mediation. Then you'll be brought back another day and you will come back for perhaps a hearing before the magistrate. And then you can potentially appeal that to the judge. And so you're going out of court 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days for a case that's less than $6,500 under the law. If you really thought it was going to be that much trouble and you're going to miss that many days of work, how do you afford to live day to day? It's not right. It's not fair. In fact, I wrote an article on it. It was published both in the Detroit Legal News, the Washtenaw Legal News, and was republished all across the states, called Reconsidering Small Claims. I urge you to read it. It's really eye-opening because Michigan small claims does not work the same way that everywhere else in the nation it does. We have a small claims division you can remove at any time, even at the day of trial, to the general docket, so that basically you could keep delaying the case ad infinitum. That's not how small claims is supposed to work. Small claims was created to make sure that people had quick resolutions. And judges are pushing these off because they don't want to hear them. They view them as nuisance claims. That won't happen in my court. That'll be done in 1 day.
Stuart, I'm giving you your 1-minute warning.
Thank you. The one other issue that needs addressing is that because I've been in so many areas of law, people don't understand there are collateral consequences. For example, there are collateral consequences to a misdemeanor. People, if you get a drunk driving, you might not be able to get a nursing license or a law license. Those things are really big problems. And I applaud the efforts that have been made by other courts, but 14A court, for some reason, does not have a sobriety court. It doesn't have a drug court. It doesn't have any other programs, and they push them out to the 15th District Court and 14B. That also has to stop. Personally, I'm a family man. I've got a wife, lovely wife of 16 years now, hopefully be 17 in November. I have 2 children, and I have a dog who I call illegal because she's part lab, part beagle. That's Jazzy. My daughter is a freshman over at Saline High School. My son is a 6th grader at Saline Middle School. So Fawn, I'm sorry, your kid is in between mine. And I would really appreciate you guys taking a look at my website to see what more I stand for at electstewart@collis.org. I can also be contacted at any time on my cell phone, 734-678-5549. And I look forward to hearing more from you and receiving your votes in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Stuart. So that brings us to our 4th candidate for 14A, Torchio Feaster. Torchio, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate it. Hello, everybody. My name is Torchio Feaster. I am glad to be here. I'm glad to meet the people who I don't know and to see the ones who I do know. Good to see you again electronically. For those of you who don't know, I'm not going to give you a full rundown of my resume. I'm going to try not to be too long. I know you all want to probably ask a few questions. But what I will tell you is that in the past, I have been a member of the College Democrats. I have been the vice president of the Genesee County Young Democrats. I have been the policy chair of the Genesee County Democratic Party, and I have been elected previously the 50th District Democratic Precinct Delegate. So those are some of the things that I've done in my career prior to settling here back in Washtenaw County. For those of you who do not know me, I am originally from the Flint area. I originally first came down to Washtenaw County when I went to Eastern Michigan University. I was at Eastern Michigan from the early 2000s, 2001 to 2004. I had a great time here. I loved my college experience. And then I went on to law school. After law school, I originally went back to the Flint area to serve. While I was there, I got married to my wife. My wife attended the University of Michigan here in Ann Arbor, and she was in residency. So in 2010, we got married. I moved back to Washtenaw County, and I lived here for 4 years with my wife during her residency program. Ultimately, we moved back here now, and we have been involved in this community for a long time. I say my connections to Washtenaw County have lasted for 20 of the last 21 years, between me being in school here, between my wife being in school here, between my wife going to residency here, and between my wife being an OBGYN here at the University of Michigan. I am very, very proud of my wife. She is an assistant professor here at the University of Michigan's medical school. Hospital. She is a professor at Michigan's medical school, and she is the associate division director of the Women's Health Division for the University of Michigan OBGYN department. We have 2 lovely daughters, Taylor and Tegan, 9 and 7, and we are very happy to be back and settled here in Washtenaw County, where we built a lovely house, and we have put ourselves in a position where we're able to have good schools, safe streets, safe neighborhoods, and to just be very, very thankful for everything that's come for our family. As some of the other candidates have said, my experience is also something that I pride myself on. I've been an attorney for almost over 15 years. And during that time, I've done mostly criminal defense work. And the reason when I went into that field, my idea was to put myself out of business. And what I mean by that is we do have too many repeat clients. I see the same people every 6 months, every 2 years, every so often. And what I found when I started this was that we have to do a better job of meeting people where they are, helping them so that they do not continue to have the same cycle over and over and over again. And so I've done everything I can above and beyond trying to get somebody to beat a case, but to try to help that person address their underlying issues. And so I've stood next to defendants when they have gone to prison for 20 years. I've stood next to the defendants and their families when they're dealing with the worst times in their lives. And I know how devastating it is and how hard it can be. I've also practiced landlord-tenant law. I've practiced bankruptcy law. I've practiced family law. I've done a wide range of different types of things. And so I think that experience is going to be very helpful should I win this position and be able to take a seat on the bench. My background is service. The entire reason why I went into law was to serve. My role models were Thurgood Marshall and Charles Hamilton Houston. And so what I tried to do was to further their goals, their plans, to try to break down boundaries, to try to make our world better and to connect us. And so that's what I've done, not just in the courtroom, but also outside of the courtroom. I'm very proud to say that if you can look at my website later on and look at my resume, but a few things that I'm very proud of is when I first came out of law school, I worked with a judge who started a mental health court. And I was there to witness her create that court to help people address their mental health issues and to help them from repeating the same cycles over and over and over again. I took that experience and I used it when I was previously practicing in Genesee County to create other courts that I found the communities need. One of the courts that I created was the City of Flint Blight Court. And that court was important because that court helped to clean up the city of Flint. It helped to make sure that people took care of their properties, took care of their litter, took care of their snow, and just maintained their properties. And I'm thankful to say that I was able to become the judge of that court after I created it. They asked me to stay on. And so I have some quasi-judicial experience where I've been able to deal with residents in a judicial capacity, to work with them as they dealt with going through the system, and to be able to cut breaks when breaks were due, and to be able to not cut breaks when breaks were not due. And I have that experience, and I think that that is something that would be great for me should I get this position. One of the things that I'm most proud of is my work with the homelessness court that I helped to create. I worked with the Center for Civil Justice to help create a homelessness court. And the purpose of that court was to help our unhoused population, our unhoused community, our residents become housed. What we found is that our unhoused population did not feel comfortable going into courthouses. They felt that if they went into a courthouse, a judge would see them and say, "What's your address?" And they would say, "Well, I'm homeless. I don't have an address." And the judge would put that person into jail, say, "I can find a home for you." And so they would not come into the court to address their issues. And so what we did was we took a judge and we took the judge to homeless shelters all around the city. And we held court right there in those homeless shelters. And that was huge because we met the people where they were. And being able to do that, we were able to clear up people's bench warrants. And that might not seem like a huge deal, but that was a huge deal because if you don't know, you're not able to receive federal housing when you have outstanding bench warrants. And so we were able to get those people the federal grants and money they need to be able to become housed by going to them and addressing their underlying issues. So those are some of the things that are in my background that show the service that I will bring to this position, the ideas and the vision that I have for our community and the goals that I think we can put into place. Just a few more things and I'll stop talking so much. My main thing that I think our judge has to do is when our judge deals with our population at the district court level, the district court is the people's court. It is the court that is the most closely connected to our residents. It's going to deal with our residents on the most surface level for things that they'll deal with every day. And what a judge has to do in that position is be able to address the underlying issues that they're going to have coming through the system. If you're sentencing somebody, what I find in my practice is that we have people who have mental health issues, substance abuse issues, lack of education, and lack of employment. And what I believe we can do as a judge, if we can partner with community groups, organizations, receive grants, and to help create programs that can help those underlying conditions and help to address those people's problems so that they do not continue to go through the cycle. And so should I become a judge, I plan to bring those ideas, those goals, that vision to be able to help the city, help the county, and to do great things. Being able to be a judge in the city of Ypsi, where I went to college, would be awesome. And being able to potentially be what I believe would be the first person of color to hold that seat would be incredible. And so I look forward to the opportunity. I hope to meet all of you in person one day. And thank you again for having me.
You have great timing, Torchio, because I was just about to cut you off. No, thank you very much. So thank you to all of our candidates. Really great job. I appreciate hearing from all of you, as I'm sure all of the rest of our audience does. We are going to open it up to questions now. Couple of things. One, in case you haven't been noticing it in the chat, our candidates have been sharing their contact information. So feel free to screen grab that or write it down if you are interested in getting in touch with any of the candidates for any reason. I'm sure they'd be happy to respond to you. One warning, sort of warning that I want to give everybody. I know that there is a topic out there that is top of everybody's minds right now, and that is the case that is before the Supreme Court, Roe v. Wade, and we're all anxiously waiting to hear about that. I want to let everybody know nobody who is running for any of these seats is in any position to do anything about that. That case will not come before them anytime soon. And if you ever want any of these judges to, or these people to be able to run for or potentially be nominated for a position such as our Supreme Courts, they will not be advised to answer any of those questions tonight, simply because answering a direct question about a case that may come before them sometime in the future is a great way to have to then in the future recuse themselves from that case. So just a word of warning to everyone in terms of questions you might have for them. Don't expect them to answer that kind of question tonight. We do have a couple of questions in the chat, so I'm going to get to those. I see two questions in here from Christina. Christina, I don't know if you wanted to ask them yourself or have me ask them for you.
Jennifer, I was going to have you ask them, but I guess let me scroll back up.
Okay.
I can do that. So, you know, obviously, and I guess I don't know how we want to do this, if we want to ask it and have a round table sort of thing. It's not directed at any one particular candidate, but if you observed a party in your courtroom being poorly represented by an unprepared or ineffective lawyer, how would you handle the situation?
So I'm going to do let the candidates do a raised hand here. Whoever wants to jump in on this first, give me either a raised hand in the chat or just hold your hand up if you'd like to answer this question. So I see Fawn's got her hand raised already, so I'm going to let you go for that first.
We've actually, at the prosecutor's office, we've had that happen before. One of the things that we take very seriously is ensuring that there's everyone's rights, constitutional rights, are being upheld. So we've done both jobs before, a prosecutor and defense attorney. That's something that I would try to continue as a judge. But if the defense attorney was missing something or forgot to say something, you know, where we would jump in and say, oh, and also the defendant knows that they have this right? So making sure that the record is clean and all the rights are being upheld, that is so important, especially as an appellate attorney. I am so specific about what's on that record, what's on that transcript, making sure that everyone's rights are being upheld and the law is being followed. So as judge, you have to take a minute and stop and either bring people to have a bench conference to talk to that attorney, to say, you know, I think that you're missing this or you're doing something like wrong, to give them an opportunity to fix their mistakes. If it gets to a point where someone's being completely not represented according to their legal rights, then maybe you have to, especially if it's an appointed attorney, is to appoint a different attorney on that case.
Sorry, I had not unmuted myself. Thank you, Fawn. Is there anyone else who wanted to jump in on that particular question? If not, Stuart, if you'd like to.
Certainly. It's difficult when you're a judge because, first of all, you have to maintain impartiality. Okay. So you can't just say, you know, jump in on one side or the other. You have to make sure that the scales are both sides are even. However, in a civil case, judges really can't step in because unlike in a criminal case, there's no right to have an attorney in a civil case. Now, it also depends on what you mean by if an attorney is doing a bad job. Are they violating ethical rules? Do I suspect that they're not representing their client well in a diligent manner? There may be responses where we are, as attorneys and judges, would have to be obligated to report that conduct to the Attorney Grievance Commission, for example. I don't think that that's necessarily the conduct you're discussing. If I'm wrong, please correct me. On the other hand, in a criminal case, it's a judge's duty, of course, to make sure that everyone's effectively represented. The people have a duty both to make sure that there's a fair trial, an impartial trial, because at one end, if there's ineffective assistance of counsel, the very first thing that's going to happen is that the case is going to get up to in our case, from district court to circuit court. Circuit court's going to look at it and say, Judge Collis, why did you let this go on. This clear person wasn't effectively represented. You should have done something in between or to prevent this. But the case law as it is, and it's really a shame. The case law on ineffective assistance of counsel, the bar is so low. There have been cases where literally a person was practically asleep and was noticed asleep, and that was deemed by our courts somehow to be effective assistance counsel. That's not right, and that does need a correction. One of the other problems as a judge is you're looking at this in a from your point of view, but you don't know what the defense or the plaintiff or the prosecutor are going to say. You don't know what the evidence is in many cases. So it's hard to judge what the trial strategy may be or may not be. Now, if I find that someone's sleeping at their desk, I think there's going to be a gavel bang and say, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, are you awake? Are we able to handle this? But it's very difficult to get involved when you don't know the facts. So it's not like I'm trying a case as a plaintiff or a defense counsel, and I'm trying the case and I know what the facts are. I'm very well prepared. I go in and I do my job extremely well. But it's not my job, unfortunately, to do another attorney's job. It's my job to make sure that the field is level and to make sure that everything is fair for all the parties. Again, in a civil case, unfortunately, no one's guaranteed a right to an attorney, so there's even less that can be done. But in the criminal setting, there's certainly more that can be done in terms of bringing everyone to the bench, talking about the case, wrapping the gavel, making sure that attention is gotten if someone's fallen asleep, make sure that the health of everyone's okay. And perhaps it's time for a mistrial or to adjourn the case until someone is better prepared. But it all depends on facts and circumstances, and your question leaves a lot open.
Thank you, Stuart. I think Marla was going to jump in, and I think we'll go ahead with you, Marla, and then move on to next question.
Thank you. So when you're the judge of that courtroom, it's your job to make sure that everyone has a fair and equal voice. There's so many things we can do to try to even the playing field, as Stuart just said. We can ask questions. We can take breaks. We can bring people back to our chambers. But we must make sure that justice is done. We must make sure that everyone's rights are enforced. And that may mean we take breaks. That may mean that we say, we ask questions. We need to be able to ask those questions. We need to be able to work together, but we also need to make sure that things are happening outside the court system. There are some great lawyer groups that are mentoring new attorneys or other attorneys who, go into different areas and trying to bridge those people together to make sure that everyone is succeeding, because we want the lawyers to succeed. We want the people who come before us to succeed. So sometimes what we're going to have to do isn't even in the courtroom. It's working together, bringing the legal community together to all support each other. But when you're in that courtroom, it's your job, it's your courtroom to make sure the right is done.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Christina, you had another question in here.
Yeah, so the other question that I had was, what do you believe to be the root cause for the high number of juvenile incarcerations and offenders, and what changes to the court system have you considered to reduce those numbers?
So I'm going to ask for maybe one of our candidates who hasn't had a chance to answer the prior question. Arianne, I see your hand up.
Thank you. That's such an amazing question, because I really think it's important that we are addressing root issues. And unfortunately, none of the candidates here are going to be serving in a probate capacity, so we won't have any juveniles on our dockets, but we will be supporting their families in other capacities. It's not uncommon to see that a juvenile maybe also has justice-involved parents at the same time. and understanding who is in front of us as a person, not a charge, not a case number, but who is in front of us really will make a difference. And if we are addressing the root issues for the parents, that will in turn help with the children. Madam Defender from the Public Defender's Office, Delphia Simpson, talks about treating her clients holistically and making sure that they have the supports that they need. I can tell you during a criminal docket, it sounds very similar. And I think some of our criminal practitioners could say a felony docket sounds like this: $1,170 fines and costs, $40 crime victims' rights fee, no contact with Jim Shoe. Don't have any contact at 123 Main Street. And it sounds exactly the same. What I would do as a judge is, with our probation department that helps make recommendations, is to make sure that we are making recommendations that are actually going to be helpful, and that they are sincere and that they are individualized and not boilerplate. I think our jobs as circuit judge and district judge would give us the opportunity then to help the parents. But I think the juvenile arrests come from over-policing, personal opinion.
Oh, good way to get that in at the last second. Karl, did I see your hand up? And unmute yourself. Karl, you need to unmute yourself.
That again, all these technical glitches, which thankfully, I think if any of us are elected, we won't have to do as much technology. It's the court staff that all the Zoom stuff has been imposed upon. And I give them great thanks, because none of us would be working if they weren't doing it, if they didn't learn that. But really, my thoughts were echo Arianne's, and as it relates to the 14A, obviously wouldn't be the juvenile, but it's the same question with regards to some of the families. And I think systemic things, that are in their person or past or household that need to be addressed through the specialty courts, substance abuse court, mental health court, veterans court, and those are what are so desperately needed. Obviously, there's budgetary, concerns that have to, be addressed to help bring that more into the 14A district court. Obviously, the 15th is taking lead on those things now. And I believe that answers the first part of the question, but I'm sorry I didn't break down the second part. So I guess I'm done unless there's more on that.
I think that was great. I am not seeing any other questions in the chat. I do have a question of my own if no one else does. Oh, I see one from Merrill. Which judges are leaving that these positions are open? So Arianne, I see you're not muted at the moment. So if you want to take that one for the seat you're running for.
Sure. For the circuit court, Judge Archie Brown is retiring pretty soon. And so he will, his seat is open seat. There's no one running for it. And it's at 22nd Circuit Court in the felony division.
Okay. And Torchio, you haven't had a chance to answer any questions. So if you want to take this one.
Thank you. Yes, I think we were all surprised to find that this seat was going to be open. Judge Kirk Tabby had decided not to run for re-election in the 14A 2 District Court, City of Ypsi. And so now you have the four of us. We're all trying to see if one of us can fill his shoes and do a great job for the city and the county as a whole.
Okay. And Torchio, I'm going to give you another second because that was an easy answer, sort of. And since you have not yet answered another question, I have a question here from Kathy. Could you tell us about your work with deflection and diversion?
Yes. Yeah, well, I mean, I think all of the candidates, or many of the candidates, have said that we need to do a better job when it comes to diverting our youth and people through the system. I think if you look at Washtenaw County as a whole, we're doing a good job. I think you've heard about the 14B recovery court. You've heard about the felony drug treatment court. You've heard about the mental health court. And so we're doing a good job in terms of doing diversion programs, but I do think we can do more. And I think it's going to take some people who have some vision, some insight into what the problems are in our communities, the problems are in our cities, to be able to help come up with some of those plans for how we can put together additional programs and reach more people. And I think that we have every opportunity to do some great things here. And I'm excited about those possibilities should one of us make the bench.
Okay. I see, Fawn, you had your hand up next. So I'm going to let you go ahead and take that question also.
Specifically, my work, I guess, with deflection and diversion, a lot of it has to do at the prosecutor level. We're the ones that kind of decide if we're going to give consent for things like HIDA. HIDA is the Homes Youthful Trainee Act. So if they're between the ages of 18 to 22, we don't need prosecutor consent, but from 24 or 22 to 26 now, they need prosecutorial consent. And that's something that has been a big change in this new administration, which I've been a huge proponent for, is that we have that freedom now to give and consent for more of those diversion programs. Ellie Sabat has started a lot of sort of justice programs that are, before they even get to the court, free charging. So some of those cases, we can look at our own cases and say, hey, this one might be a good case for restorative justice or for something that doesn't need to be charged. And we can refer those to that, the people running that program in our office. So that's been great to see, giving people those second chances to keep a clean record. And also those diversion programs, or sorry, those specialty courts, those normally result in either a dismissal or a reduction of the charges. And I think that's a great motivator for people to want to succeed in these specialty courts and to continue on their programming in their and for their futures. So it's something that we kind of look at every single day at the prosecutor's office.
Okay. And I'm going to go to Arianne next, and then we'll move on to another question.
Thank you. So diversion means you had law enforcement contact and you are diverted out of the criminal justice system. And we can do that in many different ways. That means you are, especially in the city of Ann Arbor and the program that I started, that means you are working with a caseworker. You are getting help for your root issues, substance abuse, mental health disorder, whatever that may be. Deflection is something different. Deflection means that we're helping you before you get in trouble. Novel, right? And we have not been doing this as a community, but I am very pleased to report to you that as of Monday night, the city of Ann Arbor has started the first deflection program that is completely funded starting July 1st. So what that means is we will take community referrals to a social worker who works for the city. When your police and your fire go out and they're doing a Narcan rescue on somebody who's overdosed from opiates, right now, we leave them with nothing and hope we don't have to see them again in a different capacity or in the same one, but not so lucky. Now we can say we have a social worker who can help you. And not just that, we've got money to send you to residential treatment if that's where you need to go. We will have money for housing. We will have money for identification, right? To help get your birth certificate that you just don't have anymore, to get a state ID so that you can get a job. And if you need help going to school, we have money for GED and apprentice programs. And I wish I could go on all day about this, but deflection is the next step, is helping people before they get to any one of us candidates as a judge. If we want to actually help our community, why wait until they get in trouble? Why wait? Help them now. If you are interested in hearing more about this, I'm going to have to just put something out because we just voted on it last night after midnight and I'm still awake. So I will put something out and I'm happy to share that, or feel free to email me and I'm happy to tell you all about our program that we're starting in Ann Arbor.
Thanks, Arianne. Sorry, I was distracted by a cat who suddenly needs my attention. So I feel your pain, Arianne. I thought I had him locked out, but no. Anyway, so I don't see any other questions from anyone else in the audience. So I'm going to throw one out here, something that's a little near and dear to my heart that I think Arianne made mention to earlier. I didn't realize that something about it showed up in the Ann Arbor News today until my mother told me when I got home. I sit on a police task force in the city of Chelsea. We were charged with, not police task force, I shouldn't call it that. It's a public safety task force. We were charged by the city council with coming up with recommendations for the whether or not the city should put together a police oversight or public safety oversight board. And some of that most of it comes from some incidents that happened in 2020 in Chelsea. If you're not familiar with them, there were protests for Black Lives Matter in the streets of Chelsea during 2020, and many of the participants in those protests were given public nuisance and traffic blocking violation citations. We fortunately had a very reasoned decision from our 14A court in that case, and the charges were dropped. My question for my judges, and I'm going to start, Marla, with you because you're top of my screen and I don't think we've heard from you recently, is if you're familiar with that case, and if so, I understand you can't say how you might have ruled in that case, but if you can talk a little bit about how you might have reasoned that case.
Thank you. Yeah, you're going to make us have to walk a very fine line there.
I am.
So this is about civil rights, which is very near and dear to my heart. People need to be able to express themselves. They need to be able to express their opinions. I understand that there's going to be some people who don't like what they hear, but we have to work together. And I think this has to do a lot. I guess I'm going to go outside of the court even at this point, because I would look at the facts every single time. But we've done so much training, but I still think we need to do more about bias, about ways that we can de-escalate instead of just charging people with crimes. And I think that's, we all need to work together on that. I think some of these things need to be restorative. I think there needs to be conversations. I think there needs to be communication. I think that when it's just adversarial, we don't really learn from it and we keep repeating it. So I think all the candidates are talking about this, that what we need to do is work together. We all need to come together to try to make equity real.
Let's see. I don't think that we've heard from Karl most recently, so I'm going to go with you next. But I'm actually going to give every one of you a chance to answer this question. We'll see how long everybody sticks around for this. So go ahead, Karl.
Let me make sure I'm on. So the part of the trick in this question is, are we referring to a case that is the individual before us? And when it gets to that point, the problem is already created and the best area for traction, in my opinion, has been lost. The way that something like this needs to be addressed is with more communication. Potentially, in the question as presented, it was not described whether this was the county prosecutor or the city attorney's office that had made these charges. And so
city attorney.
Okay, so if this is something with the city attorney's office that has made the charge in and for Ypsilanti, our council has requested, they can't mandate, but they can mandate by rescinding their ordinance. They could mandate by rescinding the ordinance, but city council could request that certain crimes be a lower priority to the police department and and telegraph because there would have been, I assume there'd be social media happening of when these type of protests were going to happen, and possibly an opportunity to act either from the council's level to their, their police chief, and in the alternative, something like the bench bar that I had mentioned earlier, where the police, the members of the court, that this is not an individual thing. This is a more community thing because I believe those happen multiple times, if I'm correct on that. So it's a broader thing that, okay, how are we as the system, and the judge, has a certain amount of discretion, but it's in working with the broader community that these problems really need to be addressed, and in my opinion, can be the most impactful change to address things like that.
Okay, thanks. So I think we've got 3, 4 more of you left. So I just want to make sure that everybody got the question. So if you're not familiar with what happened, there were protests in the streets in Chelsea. The protesters were given citations, and the charges were eventually dropped when the case went to court. My question for you is, how would you have reasoned that case? How would you, as a judge, have looked at that case? I'm not asking how you would have necessarily found in that case, but how you would reason that case. Because I have to tell you, I felt very strongly about the way that case was reasoned by the judge in that case. So if you could give your thoughts on how you would have reasoned that. And I see, Arianne, you've got your hand up, so I'm going to let you go next, and then Torchio will go to you.
So my understanding is that the folks who were out protesting, exercising their First Amendment right, were giving impeding traffic tickets, which is part of the Uniform Motor Vehicle Code, which is adopted by city ordinance in Chelsea. So it's ordinance and state law going at the same time, right? And so the law says you cannot impede traffic, but it gives an exception. But if you are soliciting for a charitable purpose, and that actually came from firefighters, and I don't know if you've ever seen this in your community, who used to walk around in the traffic, when the stoplight came, and they would say, oh, here, put some money in the boot for the Benevolent Association for Fallen Firefighters, and people could drop their change in the firefighter boot or a bucket. So if you're soliciting for a charitable purpose, that was okay. So we have to make the distinction, and how I reason it is that the citations were issued prohibiting what they say is the same behavior. We had people out in the streets who were voicing their opinion. They just didn't have solicitation buckets. They didn't have firefighter boots. They weren't asking for money. So the reasoning is that we were regulating speech, regulating content, and that is unconstitutional. That was the reasoning and how I would look at a situation that was similar. You have to look at whether the person on the street should be, and how can I say this? The folks on the streets who are protesting and the folks who are on the streets collecting money are engaged in the same behavior. The only thing that's different is what comes out of their mouth. And so that's where the distinction is. That's how you reason that one. Jennifer, did that answer what you were, is that what you were looking for?
It does, thank you. I'm gonna go to Torchio next, then Stuart. No, I'm sorry, Fawn had her hand up after, and then Stuart. So Stuart, I'm gonna give you the last word.
Thank you. So as you can tell by my face, I'm a Black man. And so obviously the events that occurred in March of 2020 were very sensitive to me. Obviously, watching the killing of unarmed Black men and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and other people, I took it very hard. I went out and I marched and I protested and I did the things I thought were necessary. And while I can't say how I would rule, I can definitely say that those events shook up the world and they shook up the way people looked at things. And I think that it was important that people were able to express themselves in a nonviolent way. And I think Arianne gave us a constitutional law lesson a moment ago in telling us how you analyze the law on this subject matter. But I guess what I can say that's a little different is that Being able to express yourself in a way that is nonviolent and get your point across to try to move society forward is a paramount right in this country. It's something we have to have. It's something we have to uphold and protect. And while I am not privy to the facts and the briefs in that case, I'm sure that the Judge Freshour, I believe it was, I'm sure she gave a well-reasoned legal opinion, and I'm sure she analyzed the law and the facts and gave a ruling that she felt was just and appropriate. And I'm glad that people were able to express themselves in a nonviolent and productive way.
Thank you. And yes, that was Judge Freshour, and I think I've told her and many others on more than one occasion that I thought her ruling was very well reasoned. Fawn.
Hi. So I wanted to say a little bit more about kind of what Arianne said, but she already said it so eloquently. And that's what I love about the law, right? We can research and look at the reason behind things, look at precedent, look at comparable facts, patterns, and come up with the right answer. And I also believe that I think the system works somewhat sometimes. In this case, it worked because there is that checks and balances between the police, the prosecution, and the courts and the judges, where a lot of times we look at the prosecutor's office decisions of the police and say, well, no, we're not going to do that. And the courts, then if both of those areas, the police and the prosecution, have made maybe a misstep, then the judges can step in and make things right. So I love that there's an interplay there that we're checking and balancing. One of the ways I think you approach that, I know the main question was kind of about the oversight board. I would support any sort of oversight board, because again, what's better than having that it's nothing bad is going to happen by having more oversight with checks and balances, because we all want to do the right thing in the courts, the police, the judges, the prosecution, the defense. We obviously want the right outcome and the just outcome and the legal outcome. So any type of oversight to say where different areas or different groups are doing something wrong or something where they can be improved, that helps everybody and that helps the community as well. Just across the board. That's something that we always did at the prosecutor's office when I was in the appellate division. Part of my job was training police. So we would talk to different, either what we noticed or just talking to other prosecutors, figuring out where there was some needed some training, where things were lacking, and we would come up with a training for law enforcement on that. So that's something that I think in this case, definitely more training could have been helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Stuart. I think I've gotten everybody else, right? Okay, so we're going to move on to Stuart as our wrap up for that question.
Yeah, I love being last. You always say the best for last, right? Anyway, my wife, I know I didn't mention this before. My wife used to be a Pontiac police officer. And when we had our first daughter, I know Fawn knew that. When we had our first daughter, only daughter, I guess, she retired from the police. And she, being and my wife is all 5'2" and 115 pounds back then, when soaking wet. So no one believes that she was a police officer. But that being said, she got to deal with a lot of bad situations, including people that would lay down in the middle of the street in Pontiac, blocking traffic 4 or 5 blocks long, etc. And, I would always ask her, how could you do this? Because, it's got to be a very difficult job, balancing the needs of the people who want to get to and from, work or to and from court or whatever, and you got someone blocking it off. And she said, basically, look, I'm here to serve. But she would also tell the stories about a great deal of the police officers that were there who were basically boys with toys. They didn't care about their training. They didn't care about anything else. They were there to basically be the big bully with a stick. And that's what happened in Chelsea. We had a Chelsea police officer, despite recommendations from the board to drop everything, from the council to drop everything, who's just said, my stick is bigger than yours, and this is the way it's going to go. Certainly not right. It belongs nowhere in the court system. And I'm glad that Judge Freshour made the decision that she made. As Arianne eloquently stated, she cited the constitutional law, but there's also a little bit more to it. Protests have to be reasonable as to time, place, and manner. That means that they have to be reasonable in where they are, when they are, and how they are. And I don't, again, I'm sure that this one was particularly lawful. I'm sure there was no dispute. And quite frankly, I'm bothered that one person thought that he was above everyone else in the system. And therefore, that's where oversight is needed. That's where more protections are needed. But it is the judge's job to balance the system in favor of the little guy. The little guy is the person that needs to be protected. Our system was created in such a way that we would prefer to see 100 guilty people go free than one innocent person suffer. And this is a case where I believe it was like 40 plus innocent people who are demonstrating their outrage at racist tendencies in Chelsea. And hopefully we can be rid of that now. Hopefully we'll get oversight here. Hopefully the people of Chelsea have learned from this, and I think they have, because I don't think that they're pleased with their police chief in this particular instance. And I think that sort of thing we need to see across the board, not just in Chelsea, but in Ipsy, in Saline. I mean, we had our own problems in Saline with, the racial epithets that were going on from a small group of students. There's a lot of problems with that, and it has to be changed. And the judges are there to protect everyone's right, including everyone's right to free speech, everyone's right to protest. And we're here to make sure that that stays in place. And I think that, like I said, Judge Freshour did a fantastic job of rationalizing this and doing what was right in this case.
Thank you, Stuart. Anna, I can't see you whether or not you're blushing, but I think everybody is in agreement with the outcome of that case. Well, maybe not everyone, but let's say everybody on this forum. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for sticking it out with us for a rather lengthy program tonight, but I think it was well worth it. I really appreciate all of our candidates. I have learned quite a bit from all of you, and I hope everyone else did. The recording of this will be put up on our YouTube channel when Brian gets back from, where are you, Brian?
I'm in Glen Arbor at the moment.
Glen Arbor. Off taking photographs of lovely places and things. So I highly recommend everyone to follow these candidates, check out where they're going to be, maybe show up and ask them questions in person. I know they'd like to be able to answer your questions more in depth than they have a chance tonight. But thank you very much to all of the candidates, and be sure to join us next month, Wednesday, June 15th, to hear from our state House and Senate candidates for the Western Washtenaw area. Thanks, everybody.